The Podcasting Dead is available on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, and SoundCloud. Make sure to subscribe for more podcasts. And while you're at it, drop us a like. If you want to help support the channel and have access to extra content, secret contests, and more, make sure to search for us on Patreon. Patreon.com/thepodcastingdead.
It's time to get weird on a Wednesday.
Woo-wee.
I'm Justin.
I'm JP.
And we're the Podcasting Dead. If you like podcasts, check out our channel. And also, as suggested by the gentleman before we started talking, check out our Patreon for extra podcast contests and more. But in the meantime,
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. We have a lot of fun on the Patreon cast, man. I'm going to tell you, that is, if you like the free-form style of podcast that we did, like, say, last week for Weird Wednesday, then you would love the Patreon cast, because that's all it is just a free-form discussion that sometimes is The Walking Dead, sometimes it's the paranormal or conspiracies, and then, like yesterday, it just ended up me playing guitar and trying to get JP to sing along.
I ain't gonna sing.
You do when the mic's not rolling.
Or when I'm drunk.
True. But so today, JP, what are we talking about?
Well, man, I got a lot of stuff floating around in my head. I've been, and I've mentioned this on the podcast before, the lost history, fake history, conspiracy going back to like the Middle Ages, the 1500s. And a lot of that has to do with like lost civilizations and stuff. But man, Sam Tripoli on a Tinfoil Hat podcast, I'm going back through that episode like for the second time. He had a couple guys on there, and they've got this theory that was developed by a Russian scientist, mathematician, like well-respected dude across the board. He's a professor at like the University of Moscow or something. I forget his name. You'll have to forgive me. But he's written like volumes of text on why he thinks that all of human history, bar none, from ancient Egypt to Rome to Jesus, anything that happened before the 1500s, 1500 AD, was just completely fabricated by the Roman Catholic Church, the Jesuits.
That's a pretty big claim.
He's got some compelling evidence. Now, he's not saying that the pyramids are fake, that the Roman Colosseum is fake, nothing like that. He's just saying that these monuments of our past, the history of them, the history of the people that supposedly made them, inhabited them, is completely falsified. It goes back to an actual just like grand worldwide empire, and I can't say it right. I don't know, but just this huge worldwide empire that when it finally collapsed, which a lot of the reason they were bringing this up is because they think we may be on the brink of what that early civilization went through when it collapsed, and the Vatican, the Vatican was kind of piecing things together. They were like, well, you control the information, you control the power, and we're going to write our own narrative. And all these old stories, like I said, whether it's Jesus, whether it's Julius Caesar, whether it's King Tut, whatever, it's basically just derived from stories happening around that time, the time of the Middle Ages,
So what did happen before then?
We don't know. I mean, we don't. It's a lot of blanks, man. It's hard to piece together, especially when take this. Now they said it. I haven't researched and fact checked, but no actual written original document exists predating. I think it was either 900 AD or 1100 AD, and that's relatively recent in the grand scheme of things. Like you think about, all of the things going back to, before Christ, 2,000, 2,500 years or whatever. So, and there's other cool little Easter eggs, man, that they use to back up their claim, which is really fascinating. Really fascinating.
Well, all right. So, and you might have said this. Just forgive me if you said it and I didn't catch it. But it's just a lot to take in. So, what's the point of fabricating it then? Is it just to give us some history, just to create a history?
No, they could have kept the history they had. It's basically, like I said, you control the information, you control the narrative, you control. That's information is power. So if you basically shape the history of the world to fit your own agenda, then you've got ultimate power over people. It's the same thing with religion in general. Like I said, you control people's minds, their hearts. for whatever reason, they didn't want people to know about this grand civilization. They probably wanted people to think, well, hey, this is as good as it's going to get. So you just, let us call the shots, and that's it.
Well, tell me about this grand civilization that they're trying to block from history. I mean, what about it? Like, what was it?
It was just, it was
Was it a one world
I think
thing?
I think it pretty much spanned the majority of the earth. A lot of people think that ancient peoples were divided by the oceans, by the seas. Theorists like this believe that the oceans were basically superhighways that connected people all over the world.
Well, they definitely have found things from places, like they would find I don't know, I'm just giving an example here, but they would find like a Chinese item in like ancient Egypt or something, like in a tomb at a time. And I mean, that's not a good example. So I don't know exact examples. For all I know, China and Egypt were like BFFs, but they would find things in places where they shouldn't have been for the time period. Like, right. They didn't think they had even started interacting at that point. So it makes us think that they go back even further. But This will be a really hard cover-up. I mean, you're talking about in the entire world.
Yeah.
And getting the entire world to corroborate this thing.
Well, I mean, dude, when you think of the accepted history we have, most of it would have been lost if not for the Vatican. I mean, after the fall of Rome and all this stuff, I mean, the world was in disarray. And had they not collected and preserved a lot of these old records and art and all this stuff, we probably wouldn't have a lot of the knowledge we have now of what's accepted to be a historical fact.
And so the benefit of perpetuating this lie is to hide a former civilization.
Yeah, you control the narrative. You got the power over the people. It's all about just molding people's minds in a way that you see fit. I mean, it's a big grand scale of a thing, but it's one interesting thing they pointed out. They had this old painting. It's like this medieval banquet or something, and on the table there's pineapples, and they point out that, wait a minute, pineapples weren't even introduced in Europe for like a few hundred years when Columbus brought them back over from, his adventures in the Americas. And, you could point out, well, maybe it's not a pineapple. Maybe it's something that we're just misinterpreting. But it's lots of little stuff like that it just makes it a fun little rabbit hole to go down.
Man, and I'm not dismissing that, but that's a big undertaking to spread that much misinformation.
Oh yeah, man. Yeah.
And the Vatican does have secrets.
Yeah.
But no one knows what they are. I mean, and people have speculated for many years over what those secrets could be. I mean, if this were to be true, perhaps it's the actual written, the actual history. Maybe they have the real history locked away, written record of it.
Yeah, man, I definitely think there's a lot of stuff they don't want us to know about. That goes without saying as far as prehistory, how far back human civilization actually goes. I totally buy into the idea that the ancient Egyptians as we know them didn't build the pyramids. They just basically inherited what was left over from a civilization going way further back. And I've stuck to that for a long time. My boy Graham Hancock kind of helped turn me on more and more to that idea. Which if you haven't looked into him, go check out his conversations with Joe Rogan over the years. They'll really, really give you a lot to think about.
I just I don't know, man. I mean, now let's ponder things they could be trying to cover up aside from this one grand civilization. I mean, what other things do you think they could be trying to cover up by altering history in such a big way?
Maybe aliens. Maybe extraterrestrial beings not of this earth had a lot to do with pre the modern civilization. Maybe they were like, man, we need to make sure people don't know. I don't know. Maybe they're covering up that some race ruled us and they retreated beneath the earth, and they were like, man, we don't want people knowing about this. Who knows? who knows what they're
What about giants?
Yeah, giants could play into it, yeah.
That's something. You actually bought a book on that, didn't you?
I did, man. I've thumbed through it. I hadn't really dove into it. But
talking about the possibility of giants once existing, because you see a lot of photos online, but in today's time, my mind tends to go to, oh, that's photoshopped. But in fact,
most cases it is, yeah.
But there have been some. I mean, we've actually talked about this on the channel, but there's been instances supposedly where the Smithsonian has covered up skeletal remains or findings of giants, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of claims that the museums and universities across the country have disposed of, destroyed, hidden all these ancient skeletons of native people to North America. And I mean, you see this all over the world, but around here, yeah, like burial mounds with these giant skeletons, and supposedly just they got to where they were like, well, this kind of calls into question maybe the theory of evolution narrative and all this kind of stuff, or maybe if it was a more conservative, which you would think like a conservative Christian college, it'd be like, oh yeah, we told you, Goliath and all that stuff was real, but no, anything that calls the official narrative into question, man, they're going to cover it up. You control the information, you control the power, no matter what the information is. Fake news, fake science, fake history. I mean,
when you get into conspiracies, man, there's just everything is a lie.
Well, I mean, look at how much we're lied to. That 10 years later we find out, oh man, they were totally lying to us about this. The Gulf of Tonkin leading us into Vietnam War, the Tuskegee stuff, infecting poor black people with syphilis or whatever. 9/11, we're uncovering just stuff about that all the time. I mean, the media, all these people, they have their agendas.
Oh, now that's something. While I don't necessarily buy into all the conspiracy theories, I mean, I totally believe politicians and the people in charge have their own agendas, and they definitely mislead us.
Oh, yeah.
Because they know that the common person would not go along with their agenda. But They have that position of power. They can make it happen. But to keep unrest at bay, they lie or they mislead us. I mean, I totally believe that. I mean, presidents and the CIA, and not just here in the United States, world governments have been doing that forever.
Yeah, man. And think about how easy it was to do that back in like the Middle Ages. I mean, you didn't have... most people couldn't even read, you know what I'm saying? So, I mean, faking history, faking information about what was going on, it was so much easier.
Well, nothing's more dangerous to someone in power than a riled up civilization.
Yeah.
Maybe that was riled up citizens. People get mad. I mean, that's the thing, man. If only people knew, if only we understood the power of the people.
Yeah.
And it just... Yeah, that's why. I mean, politicians lie. That's pretty much, everybody gives lawyers a hard time. But I mean, essentially, the ultimate liars out there are politicians. And if somebody makes it in politics, you assume either A, they are the rare exception, or the more likely scenario, despite how much you like them, they're lying pieces of shit.
That's probably why so many lawyers end up in politics.
That's true. That is very true. They start off studying law, and then the next thing you know, they're in politics.
Yeah.
But that's just such a big lie to perpetuate. I mean, now it just has me curious on what it is they could be covering up. I mean, this grand civilization. I mean, we're talking like a one-world government.
Well, I have a feeling, man, that... after the fall of that, I have a feeling the people, just in general, the general population, had it a lot better off. They were better educated. Just the quality of life was that much better. And, the Vatican's trying to kind of piece things back together, get things back in order. And they're like, well, we don't really want people to know how good they had it. We want them to think that, right here and now is about as good as it's going to get. And if they want to at least hold on to this, they better just, do as we say and believe what we tell them. Like I said, I mean, most of these people couldn't even read.
Now, that's something I couldn't believe. The thought of, we don't want, what you just said, we don't want them to know how good they had it.
Exactly.
We want them to think this is as good as it gets, because as long as they're content with their little trivial bullshit lives, we can continue to do our thing. And, if only they knew what they, I don't know, man. That's interesting. I don't necessarily buy into it, but it's a really cool thought.
I mean, think about this. The Catholic Church didn't even want them questioning their faith. It was the longest time. I mean, the Catholic services, the Bible, all this stuff, the whole thing was spoken in Latin, if I'm not mistaken. And, the general layperson, they don't know Latin. You might as well be speaking Chinese. You know what I'm saying? That was a big reason for the Protestant Reformation. You're like, how are you spreading the word of God? They don't even know what the fuck you're saying. You know what I'm saying? What I mean? So they were less. I mean, on one hand, the Catholic Church has done a lot of dirty deeds. On the other hand, if we accept history for what it's been told to us, I mean, the history of Western civilization would have been largely lost if not for them. So I don't know, man. I don't know.
Very interesting.
It's weird stuff, man. The Catholics are some weird folks with their robes and their hats, big old pointy hats.
Yeah.
Who knows what they're hiding under those hats?
Extraterrestrial heads.
Maybe they have the big throbbing like brain head. You know what I'm saying?
Now, speaking of extraterrestrials, going back on what you were saying earlier, what do you think the chance of extraterrestrials guiding our evolution is? Because that's you watch Ancient Aliens, which I like that show a lot. But my God, like as people that are in entertainment and do voice work and stuff like that, the narrator in that show is so repetitive. It makes it hard for all I could focus on is as ancient astronaut theorists believe. Oh my God. But I mean, what do you think? What do you think the chances that our evolution as a species was manipulated or guided by extraterrestrial beings?
I mean, there's still a lot we can't explain. I mean, they say that on an evolutionary scale, we went from 0 to 100 like that. I just snapped my fingers.
Like some big event or something happened and we just woke up smart.
It makes you wonder, dude. It really does. And like I said, I've kind of gotten to where I'm not sure extraterrestrials to me, if I take it more as like a being traveling from another planet, to here in a rocket ship or whatever, or if it's more like interdimensional beings, which we talk about a lot, kind of messing around with humans. And that would explain, you got characters like Satan in the Bible. I mean, some extra-dimensional being that can shapeshift into a snake and seduce early humans into doing muffed up stuff. I don't know.
Well, I've always thought about that myself. When you think of Satan shape shifting and stuff. If there are beings with the ability to travel between dimensions, or not even dimensions, let's just keep it basic. If they can travel here, we know that the UFO videos we've seen, the UFOs go really fast.
Yes.
I mean, those suckers fly, and some theorize it's not so much that they're moving, but they're moving the space around them, which I find to be really fascinating.
Oh, yeah.
But even though they go super fast, I would imagine if they travel light years to get here, they've probably mastered wormhole technology and things like that. And I mean, even if they haven't, that means they've created a vehicle that can go ridiculously quick and get here, because I mean, for us to get to them with our technology, we'd have to send astronauts up there with the goal of reproducing, raising children to pilot the ship, and then they do the same, and the process would have to continue to get to them, whereas they, it seems, can just travel here when they want. So either way, what I'm getting at is they've got ridiculously advanced technology.
Oh yeah, they're leaps and bounds ahead of us.
Who's not to say they don't have hologram tech? That would be easy. We can bring Tupac back. Imagine if you could get a hologram of someone, right? And you could go back in time. Let's just say you videotaped someone's father and they passed away. But you could, use hologram technology, and it really wouldn't be that hard to just, be like, I've brought your father, here's the spirit of your father. Or to place his hologram around you and pretend. What I'm getting at is just the technology. I thought that as a kid. Like, what if it wasn't magic? What if it was technology?
Yeah, man, I totally think all these myths and stuff from, the Greeks and the Bible and all this stuff, it could have just been a super advanced technological race just messing around with us, Hey, let's make this a crazy Medusa thing and make people think it's turning them into statues. And
it's kind of like Rick on Rick and Morty, where he had the the laser, the gun that turned people into snakes, but then he come to find out that it's spoilers, but I mean, this is like seasons back, but it's like, he disintegrates them and then a little snake comes out of a tube on his ankle. Yeah. Like you think it's one thing, but it's not.
Yep.
I've always, thought about the possibility, or like you said, I mean, definitely extraterrestrial beings, but even interdimensional beings. Just like, dude, we found a very primitive dimension where there are these, primate beings that are very gullible and they're very behind us in technology. Come on, Jeff, let's go mess with them.
Oh, man.
And who's not to say that it's not being, it's them messing with us so much as it's maybe they're trying to guide us to something. I mean, the burning bush speaking to someone.
No, I still think that was a
DMT trip.
Yeah, I think old Moses was tripping.
But you think DMT connects you to extra dimensional beings, so that could still be.
It could be, yeah.
Them using that to guide Moses to where he needed to be.
Oh, absolutely, dude. I really think, I think it's interesting. I don't believe anything, but I think it's very interesting, the idea that consciousness isn't created by the brain; it's received from somewhere else, and that DMT helps facilitate this transition of consciousness from its point of origin to our brain in the right here and now. And man, if anybody who's heard of our podcast, Gods and Ghosts with Julius, man, I really want to get him back in here and just all the examples of like possible psychedelic,
You would melt his poor brain to tell that poor boy he's very big into religion, and you go trying to tell him that his religion just amounts to one big drug trip.
The Bible's a trippy tale, man. And
think about like what the angels look like in the Bible. They were terrifying. I mean, you had like a wheel of eyeballs or something like this very trippy, things that you would hear someone describe after an acid trip. Like oh Jacob's man, ladder. I saw this ladder come from the sky and this huge wheel with eyeballs on it came down and told me that I need to love everyone. And I mean, get what I'm saying?
Yeah, man. I mean, sometimes I think with Jesus, man, what if he was just like a less murdery Charles Manson instead of dosing his followers with LSD like Charles Manson did? Maybe he was just dosing them, like microdosing them with the psilocybin or DMT, and
Well, do you think he did feed them a lot?
Yeah. I mean, maybe he has ascended into heaven. Maybe it was more metaphorical.
Who's to say Jesus wasn't? And again, if you're religious, I mean, this is just we're questioning, we're talking, we're discussing. Don't get. Sometimes people get super upset, and it's like, no. The point is, we're discussing possibilities here. So
those people have probably tuned out by now.
I don't know, man.
They probably left some hate in the comment section, and they
there's some people who will stay right along until you start calling religion into question, and then it's just like absolutely. And it's like we're not at all saying. I mean, for all you know, I could be religious. It's pondering. It's what ifs, and I mean, you think. I mean, what if Jesus what if he was an extraterrestrial? It had. Yeah, I don't know. It's just it's a lot of possibilities out there.
Yeah, it is, man.
No, you talking about. I mean, like, I just go back to simulation theory.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, the more and more I read about what simulation theory could mean as far as how it could describe every anomaly, and I mean,
I think it's very
places where people just disappear and ghosts and past life memories and things like that. I mean, it just all fits so well. I mean. And I don't want to get too into it because we've definitely the last 2 or so podcasts we've discussed simulation theory.
No, I love it, man.
I do too. I find it fascinating. Just the fact that it's like, ghosts, that's leftover coding. Someone died, but the coding hasn't completely went away. So there's fragments of them doing what they know. Because again, most supernatural beings or ghosts are. You got your few that are throwing shit around, but most of them are just seen doing what they would have normally. Yeah. The lady in red is seen walking down the Great Hall every day at noon. Just something like that. To me, that sounds like a pre-programmed action more than it does spirit not aware that it's dead.
Yeah, it does.
But yeah, I mean, what if the simulation, you're talking about fabricating history, what if the simulation didn't start until around the 1500s? What if that's the missing time there? The unwritten history. What if that's the missing time?
It does make you wonder if we are in a simulation at what point in history, assuming that any of our history is valid, did it start? Were we inserted into said simulation? I don't know.
Well, simulation and time travel, which with time travel, there's so many paradoxes that it's really hard to nail down how time travel works. I mean, different sci-fi movies have different rules, and different scientists and physicists have different ideas of how it would affect. You got like the grandfather paradox of, if I go back in time and kill my grandfather, do I cease to exist? Because then you're in a hell of a paradox, because it's like, but if I killed him and that means I don't exist, and that means I didn't exist to come back in time to kill him.
Right.
But then if I kill him, would I come back to my reality and he be gone, or would it create a whole new reality where he died and I was never born, but my reality continues in the way that it was going? So with time travel, you got so many paradoxes that it's just hard to fathom how any of this would work. But I mean, if you were to go with the time travel, let's say, like, we've known our whole lives George Washington was the first president of the United States. But what if he wasn't? You go, oh no, I have memory. Like, I know. Right. But if someone went back in time and changed it, and our memories reset with the change in time. I actually was writing if you listen to our channel a lot, I love to write. And one concept, I was writing a book. It was a fiction story, obviously, but it was just this guy starts noticing changes overnight in his area, and people and things go missing. And then you find out that it's these people are manipulating time, and everyone else in the world's brains are resetting with each change. But his, for some reason you don't find out till later, isn't resetting. So he's actually seeing the changes. But if our brains reset with time changes, somebody could have just put George Washington in power like an hour ago, right? But our memory has reset. You've got all these memories of, I remember learning about that in kindergarten. And no, of course, because that's your memory's been. So, I mean, it could be the same way with a simulation. I mean, just think like in the game Uncharted. Nathan Drake is this funny. You didn't play Uncharted, so that's a bad example. You haven't played any video games in modern history. But, let's just say for those that play games, Nathan Drake, Uncharted, one of my favorite game series. Nathan Drake is funny and charming and has all these great memories of being a treasure hunter. Well, guess what? If they go back and reprogram his character to, be a asshole that, does something different, perhaps he's a tax collector. They've changed his programming. So, I mean, at what point would he realize, he wouldn't? And that might be a bad example. In my mind, it was working, and when it came out my mouth, it didn't, But yeah, so I don't know, man. It's fascinating.
It's wild, man. It's wild stuff. Who knows? A lot of people, man, talking about change in history, a lot of people think that we're actually chronologically living in the Middle Ages, sort of, because they think they added a bunch of years to the calendar and stuff like this. Like it was something they did the astronomy with where the star was in the Jesus story, and said for that to be true, according to astronomy, he would have had to have been born in like 1100 AD or not, something like that. Like not at the start of the calendar, 32 AD or whatever. It would have been in the 1100s, somewhere in there. So it's weird, man. It's crazy. These people know more than I do about it, but it's fun to think about.
And now I got on a time travel thought.
Yeah.
Like I just find the idea that extraterrestrials, because think about it, man, extraterrestrials being us from the future makes perfect sense, because they show up and, a lot of people, myself included, being a skeptic by nature, we've noticed that extraterrestrial activity seems to have kind of went downhill. Oh, well, not downhill, but it's not as frequent now that there are cameras everywhere. And then you could take that as it was all fabricated, made up, because back then, and, it was easier to make up crap. Who could question you? There wasn't. But there's other ways you could take it. The extraterrestrials are smart enough to know that there is now much higher risk of being caught on camera.
Right.
Or you could take it as if extraterrestrials are us from the future, observing our past, I mean, of course, now we're at a point where everything is recorded. They would not have as much need to observe events in our modern time because it's all recorded. It's on Facebook. It's on TikTok. It's on Snapchat. I mean, everything is recorded. So the activity was highest at points in time. Like we've had several instances where it would seem that ancient civilizations dealt with extraterrestrial or people coming from the sky. Yeah. So who's not to say that the reason why the activity seems to have gone down? I mean, you still got lots of videos out there, but you can tell 9 out of 10 of them are computer animated or something. But who's not to say that they didn't stop coming back as frequently? Because if they had a question about what happened at this point in history, they actually probably have archives. But pre that, it would make perfect sense they'd be a heavy presence because they, especially at the time of the nuclear creation, creating the nuclear bomb or the atomic bomb. I mean, that was, they might have been going back to observe how exactly that was done. I mean, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, the weird thing is, say they were observing us through the 50s, a lot through the 20th century as world wars developed and nuclear bombs were developed and dropped. But in prehistory, ancient civilizations, they took a pretty active role in human civilization. I mean, look back at the ancient Hindu texts, man. They were having wars in the sky, and I mean, with the I forget the Sumerians or whatever. I mean, they were
you did. You're talking about the Hindu faith where all the gods had this big battle in the sky, right?
Yeah. And I mean, they weren't just here observing ancient man. They were governing us. I mean, some people even say enslaving us and genetically manipulating us. So I mean, I don't know, man. I don't know. Maybe there were different factions. Maybe they started this thing up, had some fun with us, then backed off for a little while. Then we're like, well, we'll just kind of, do a voyeur kind of thing and just watch.
Kind of like the ant farm theory. They just created us to observe and more or less just for the hell of it, the same reason a kid has an ant farm.
I mean, you think about certain experiments, like scientists who go into the jungle just to observe the monkeys. But like I said, I mean, there's so many. I mean, at one point you take biblical text. I mean, these entities were having sex with human women, which a lot of people think that they weren't actually having sex; they were just genetically manipulating and stuff. But it's weird, man. I don't know.
I just if these were extraterrestrials, I mean, because another compelling theory that I've heard, and when I say compelling, I don't necessarily mean convincing. I guess I use the word compelling sometimes where I should use the word interesting. But another interesting theory is that we were created to mine resources.
Yeah, that Anunnaki stuff.
Yeah, extraterrestrials, they came down, they took primitive man. I'm not sure at what stage in our evolution they stumbled across, but they took us and did some genetic manipulation, some say with their own DNA, but something to advance us to be more intelligent because we could be controlled easier and told what to do. And they had us, they basically, our evolution was based on silver and gold and these precious metals. And that's why, I mean, you notice, I do, and maybe it's just because I'm dumb and simple-minded, but we're attracted to shiny things.
Yeah.
We always have been. You see those little holographic comic book covers. You're just attracted to them. Or if you see a kid's toy that, has a what am I thinking? Like a prism effect, you see all these colors and it just, as you, move it in a light source, it shines and glimmers. It's just something that makes you feel warm inside. I don't know how to explain it. Maybe that's just me, but it's we just evolved to be attracted to shiny things because we were mining. And then there's different reports, or different theories. There's one that we rose up and we revolted, and then they just said to hell with y'all and left, to which I highly doubt we would stand a chance in a revolt against extraterrestrials with the technology it would take to kickstart evolution and control us. The more likely theory, they say, is that other extraterrestrials found out about this and were like, you can't do that. You can't enslave civilizations, and fought them off, which would kind of tie into that Hindu story of the gods fighting in the sky.
Yeah, man.
Like they rolled in, found out, like, kind of like in the Orville, which I know we're talking a lot of sci-fi here, but keep in mind, these are all theories that I don't necessarily believe. So it's fun to just discuss. But, like there's almost a galactic federation out there.
Right.
And you got to think of how advanced all of even some of the lower tier members of this federation would be highly advanced. So, it was considered, I don't know if the word inhumane would count when it comes to extraterrestrials, but they were doing that for their own reasons. And then someone from like that federation or another set of extraterrestrials realized like, man, they're enslaving other living beings. You can't do that. And they came and told them to leave. They weren't happy about it, and a battle ensued. And after the battle, they just kind of left. I guess we were all sitting here like, so what do we do?
Right.
I don't know. You want to go write a story?
Well, according to old Zachariah Sitchin, who translated the ancient Sumerian texts, the Anunnaki from Nibiru, which some people call Planet X, it's like in a reverse rotation around the sun from us. It's like rotating on the other side of the sun. They needed the gold to repair their ozone layer or some crazy stuff like that. And which most, like pretty much all mainstream scholars have discredited everything he said was in those tablets. But I don't know, man. It almost seems like if you had the ability to do all that stuff, you'd have like automated machinery to be able to mine. I don't know.
It's easier though. I mean, like you think about it, they would have machines and things like that, but it's just easier to kickstart the evolution, and our population spread. I mean, you just have this free labor, I mean, you don't have, and maybe they just don't, only a few. And now, if we rose up and revolted, it could have been that they only left an outpost here,
right,
to manage, or several little outposts spread out to manage humans, and then, maybe we just rose up and killed them or something. But the idea that, and it's wild. I mean, then you got theories that we got here on a asteroid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, some primordial soup that latched on to some bacteria. Next thing you know, you got stuff crawling around and wiggling and doing weird stuff.
I don't know. So what do you think? I mean, like where do you stand on all? I mean, you're more interdimensional beings than you are extraterrestrial beings. So
here lately, what
do you think? I mean, do you think that there's? How do you feel about the idea that our evolution was shaped by extra dimensional or terrestrial beings?
I mean, there's definitely a lot of things we can't answer as far as the development of our species. So I think it's totally possible. I don't know, man. It's weird, wild stuff. As old Johnny, whatever his name would say.
I don't know. What do you think about time travel?
I mean, I'm open to the idea. Like you said, there's so many different versions and circumstances. I mean, I'm open to the idea of it.
I mean, so you don't believe anything. That's kind of your mantra. You don't really believe anything.
I just don't like the idea of believing in stuff.
You don't like labels. That explains a lot of your commitment issues.
Right.
But give us a go through JP's head. You're a very intelligent guy. I know that you have thoughts. I mean, if you were to formulate, because you are way more into conspiracies than I am. I love talking about them. I love reading about them. But I mean, you spend a lot of time listening to like Veritas Radio and the Tinfoil Hat podcast and the Truth Factory. I mean, you really get into this stuff. So you know way more than I do. I mean, after all the things that you've heard and all the theories, give me kind of JP's history here. Like, what do you kind of lean towards, or what do you give more credence to?
Oh man, I mean, setting aside the time travel and the aliens and all this stuff, I think that the people in power have made a very concerted effort to control information and what we think and what we believe, and I think that's the ultimate control mechanism, is just having their hands on the narrative just of life, whether it's science, history, religion, whatever.
Right.
I think that's the ultimate control mechanism. That's the ultimate yoke on our back. So, I mean, like I said, whether there's aliens involved or DMT beings, communicating to us from the void, I think at the end of the day, man, the people in power, they're just manipulating the information to their own.
But I mean, number one, you said,
I don't know.
Number one, you said yolk, which makes me hungry because it makes me think about eggs. Number two, I was talking more of like, though. I mean, I get that you think that the power is to lie and manipulate, but I'm saying digging deeper than that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what do you think? What are your thoughts on humanity? I mean, like how we got here, what we're doing here. I mean, what do you think? You've heard a lot of conspiracy theories about it. I'm just curious as to what you lean more towards is like the origin of man, our story up to the point that we started manipulating our own story.
I think that human civilization goes back a lot further than what's generally accepted. And well, I said whether aliens played a hand in it, I do think that psychedelic elements in nature help develop the modern human brain, abstract thought, language, all that stuff.
Where did it come from? Just you talking about like eating certain plants and things like that?
Just animals experimenting with our ancient ancestors, experimenting with different stuff in their environment. The same way you find out, well, hey, that berry is good to eat, that one's bad to eat, this one will make you feel better if you have a headache. Same thing with the psychedelics, and I think that had a major impact on the development of our consciousness.
Yeah.
But as far as like I said with aliens and all that stuff, it's possible. I don't know, man.
Well, we do know that certain animals do certain things to get high.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like we've seen like squirrels that find fermented pumpkins, and it's nothing for a squirrel to eat a pumpkin, but then the squirrel gets drunk and passes out, but it comes back day after day after day after day.
Right.
It's not like, you would think, well, the squirrel might not like that. It doesn't know what being drunk is, and it makes it, whatever. But no, the squirrel knows it alters its state, and it keeps coming back to it. So the thought that humanity or a primitive form of humanity might have found some kind of substance or plant that made them think differently or feel differently and kept coming back to it, and eventually that helped shape evolution to an extent. I mean, I don't know that I believe it, but I definitely think it's plausible.
There's a lot of people doing a lot of research on that. I mean, Terrence McKenna, he's got a lot of stuff out there on YouTube, a lot of books. He's a big advocate for the stoned ape theory, and we're discovering more and more every day that microdosing with psilocybin, the active ingredient in magic mushrooms, it helps regenerate brain cells, and all this. They're using stuff like that to treat PTSD. I mean, we're finally reinvesting in these sacred elements in nature with psychedelic properties that benefit us in a million different ways.
Well, forgive my ignorance because I'm not as up on my dosing, when it comes to things like acid and the DMT and stuff. Microdosing to me sounds like you're saying giving a very small dosage. Is that what microdosing is?
Yeah, and they're doing it a lot with psilocybin. You don't take enough of it to like trip your ass off. You just take enough. I don't know how much of the effects of the psilocybin you feel, but you just take enough of it on a daily or semi-daily basis for your body to absorb it. And like I said, it has a lot of benefits as far as cognitive function, and it helps the brain. And a lot you see stuff advertised like a shroom tech coffee, like there's mushroom-based supplements and coffees and teas. And like I said, more and more they're introducing psilocybin, which most states is still illegal. But like I think the city of Denver legalized psilocybin for sale and use or whatever. So
it is interesting when you've shown me different things on DMT and such, and it is wild that a lot of people see the same beings. You don't really seem to have that as much with like other mind altering substances.
No.
I mean, you might have some commonalities, but mostly people kind of see whatever's in their subconscious, I guess, whatever. But with DMT, you have these complete strangers giving these almost identical reports of seeing these beings, and they either draw or describe them to all pretty much be the same beings, and it almost like you said, seems like it unlocks something in the brain that allows you to be amongst these higher beings. So you said, tying into this earlier, like the thought that consciousness is projected. And so would that mean we're kind of just androids, just kind of receiving the consciousness that we have from elsewhere?
That's an idea out there, man, that our consciousness comes from a plane of existence beyond where we are now. And think of it kind of like how our radio station works, like this is where the consciousness comes from, and it's taken to the tower and beamed wherever. And
then taking DMT kind of takes you back to where the consciousness is coming from.
To the point of origin, yeah. That's what a lot of people think.
Very interesting.
I still have sadly not been able to do DMT, but I very much want to.
And now, bringing it around full circle here, if you're new to the podcast, JP is a huge Bigfoot fan. The Sasquatch is one of JP's favorite things.
Oh, yeah. I love
and wasn't there some kind of tie-in to DMT in Sasquatch at one point?
Yeah, some people think that he sort of dwells within the DMT realm or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it was about, but yeah, like because the DMT is not just found in nature; it's produced by our pineal gland, and a lot of people think that something to do with I can't remember, but yeah, Sasquatch is connected to it. I think. Yeah, forgive me. That podcast we did was a while back. I can't remember exactly what it was all about.
But super interesting, man. Like I said, I don't know. I'm not as on my conspiracy jam as JP, but I just love discussing them, man. It's just like, it's just pondering. What if?
It's crazy, dude. And just while I'm thinking about it, for those that are more interested in this cover-up of history, check out Tinfoil Hat with Sam Tripoli. It's episode 371 from September 23rd. The Roman Empire never existed, and all history before the 1500s is a lie with James and Scott. So that'll give you a much deeper dive and a more well-informed...
But if the Roman Empire didn't exist, then what's the Colosseum?
Well, all that stuff is real. It just the Romans they weren't the people responsible for it.
So that was somebody else's Colosseum.
Yeah, it's like
they just assigned it to the Romans.
Yeah, it's like if our civilization collapsed and you were like, instead of telling people about the United States of America, you were like, yeah, this place coast to coast was known as Disneyland, and Mr. T was the emperor, and you just make it up as you go along. Like the places existed, obviously, but just you make up the history.
What if
be whatever you want?
What if there was civilization and then a zombie apocalypse hit and just took everyone out, and then they just reshaped history to make it more pleasant? I mean, they didn't do a good job because ancient history is terrifying and dark. But
that comic we're reading, Year Zero, that kind of goes into that a little bit, like the Great Wall of China keeping zombies out.
Yeah, I'm joking, by the way. My God, some people would be like, "Oh my God, this idiot believes in a zombie apocalypse."
But hey, man, who's to say?
I mean, that's what we're doing. We're just pondering and discussing.
Yeah, just having a good time.
But yeah, so let us know what you think in the comments below. Don't forget to check out our channel, subscribe. We discuss a bunch of different things, from The Walking Dead, which we talk about several times a week, we talk about once a week, but it's about to be several times a week. We discuss the supernatural. We discuss paranormal, which I guess they're one and the same. We discuss, conspiracies. I mean, just a little bit of everything. So if you enjoy podcasts, I definitely think you might enjoy our channel. And we also have a Patreon I talked about at the beginning. Check that out. I mean, some Patreon conversations end up just like this one. I mean, they're very free form, just in the sense of we never know what we're going to talk about when we sit down, but they can go into the paranormal, they can go into conspiracies, they can go into entertainment. Lots of different places that our conversations
cool stuff,
go.
Yeah.
And it's only $1. I mean, if you want to donate $5 or $10 a month, that helps us out a ton. But even if you want to donate $1, you still get 8 extra podcasts a month. And I just... looking at other Patreon pages, I mean, that's pretty good. Some of them I see for $1, you get like a shout out.
Right.
And that's pretty much it. I mean, we're giving you 8 extra of these a month. So definitely check it out and support the channel. The more patrons we get, the more we can focus on the show. We both have full-time jobs. JP has multiple jobs. So right now it's kind of passion project at the moment. But if it was actually to be able to come somewhat like a job, the quality would just go up. So just check that out. And if you don't, just help us by liking and subscribing.
And just to put our money where our mouths are, whatever, and just to given the topic of conversation today and the fact that today is dropping a brilliant comic. I read it last night. Department of Truth by James Tynion, I think is how you say his name, the fourth. He writes one of your favorite comics, Something's Killing the Children. I've got them. I haven't read them yet. He also is writing Batman. It's a great conspiracy-based comic. Give him a secret word to drop.
I'm on the spot here. A secret word to drop.
Give him a code word.
All right, the code word I want you to drop is Pegasus. That might be too hard to spell.
Yeah,
I don't even know how you spell
that.
Pegasus. All right, let the code word be. You know what? How about a secret phrase?
There you go.
Let's get weird.
Let's get weird. Okay.
Drop that in the comments section.
Hashtag that or whatever the procedure is.
If you hashtag it, it's way easier for us to see it.
Hashtag it. We're going to do a drawing. Next Wednesday, we'll announce the winner, and I will be sending you issue number 1 of Department of Truth. Awesome comic, and it's all about conspiracies.
Well, then I guess I'm going to get issue 1 today if it's that darn good.
No, it's in your box, brother.
Oh, is it?
Yeah,
You're the best comic shop person ever.
So, yeah, do that, and we'll get in touch with you, and it'll be a beautiful thing.
So let's get weird. Put it in the comments section, and somebody's going to win a free comic. In the meantime, we'll catch patrons tomorrow for the Patreon podcast, and then we'll be back here on the wide web for another Walking Dead Friday cast. So we'll see you soon. I'm Justin.
I'm JP.
And we're the Podcasting Dad. Please stay weird.